Alright guys, how's it going? Welcome back. Firstly, can I just say a big thank you to everyone who's signed up for my online course. If you're new to the channel or you've not heard me mention it before, I spent the last few months building an online portal which contains nearly 100 videos which explains how to get into the motor trade or how to build your used car business. So I'll leave the link below if you're interested in signing up for that. Do check it out because there's a video for everything from sourcing cars to insurance policies to location to advertising. It's all there and it's all covered. So I'll leave the link below so you can check it out for yourself. Anyway, on to today's car. Today I'm in this 2003 Porsche 911. This is the 996 911, which ran from 1997 all the way until 2004. Interestingly, these are the cheapest 911s money can buy. If you've always fancied a 911, always craved one, the 996 generation can be bought for not an awful lot of money, but that's about to change. If you head over to Auto Trader, you'll see that they start at around £12,000. But I think you've got to act quick because they won't stay that price forever. In fact, they're already on the rise. A year or so ago, you could pick them up for around £10,000 or less, and now those kind of 911s just don't exist. Really though, and this is true of everything that I film with, you ought to steer clear of the cheapest. You're going to have to spend between £14,000 and £15,000 to get yourself a decent one. There's been a sudden switch for me with the 996 recently. It's never really been a car that I've fancied, and yet suddenly, almost overnight, I kind of want one. I've seen Sam from Seen Through Glass recently buy one, and I've suddenly followed lots of people on Instagram who have 996s who take very nice pictures of them, and every time I see one I've got that twinge of envy, thinking, I really quite fancy one of those cars. It's strange, it's almost as if they've suddenly come of age. Even the fried egg headlights that I never really liked aren't offending me like they used to. Anyway, I can't be on my own because prices are shooting up, so it seems other people must be having similar revelations. I love the simple styling of the 996. It's subtle, it's dignified. In an increasingly complicated world, I'm attracted to the simplicity of the 996. Everything about it is just enough. The performance is just enough, so you won't kill yourself in it. The styling is just enough. I love how the performance is implied with the styling rather than made explicit like later models. Listen to me, I'm not even a 911 fan really, and here I am gushing. Suddenly overnight I've turned into Magnus Walker. Unfortunately for me, I can't really justify having a 996, and believe me, I've tried. I've still got, well, I'm not bragging now, but I've still got my 2005 E46 M3, which I love. Every time I think about getting rid of it, I look around it and it's like sending a faithful dog to the pound. I just can't do it. And I've still got my 02 SL55 AMG. So I think as far as childhood dream cars from the mid-noughties go, I think I've got both boxes ticked. In truth, both those two cars are just parked up anyway. I rarely use them. So 98% of the journeys I make are done in my Range Rover. And that's kind of the trouble. If I did buy a 996, it would just be parked up next to those two. And what's the point? They need to be used and enjoyed. So I don't really need another car. I haven't got the space for it, and I don't really have the money, so what's the point? And yet, I can't help myself but keep searching for them on Auto Trader. I usually start looking at the cheapest, ropiest examples for about 10 or 11 grand. Then I think, no, if I'm getting one, I should spend 16 or 18 and get myself a decent one. Then I think, well, for an extra 10, I could get a 997. Then I think, well, hang on, if I'm spending 30 odd grand for an extra 10, I could buy a 991. Yeah, I really fancy one of those. And then before I know it, I've wasted the evening looking at 992s with the delivery mileage, trying to keep my balloon payment down. And then I have to just walk away from my laptop and go and get some fresh air. Does anybody else do that, or is it just me? I hope I'm not on my own there. Anyway, we're about 5 minutes in now, so I should probably tell you about the car, shouldn't I? It's been around since 1997. It was facelifted in 2002. And as I've mentioned in other 911 videos, there are a confusing number of models. It's taken me a while to get my head around them, but I'm slowly learning. The range starts with the simple two-wheel drive Carrera, which is the model I'm in today, and that goes all the way up to the four-wheel drive Turbo, aka the Widowmaker. The Turbo is just too fast to use. It looks awesome, but unless you've got your own private airstrip, you're never going to max it out. Then there are the two lightweight track-focused cars, the GT2 and the GT3. The model I'm in is a Carrera 2, which means two-wheel drive. Then they do a Carrera 4, which means four-wheel drive. This has the narrow body as opposed to the wide body you get on the four-wheel drive models. As much as I love the wide body cars, there's a lot to be said for the dainty narrow body. As you drive this, it feels nice and small. It's dainty and agile. You can thread it through traffic. Early 996s used a 3.4 litre flat six. In 2002 they were upgraded to the 3.6, which is found in this. Obviously, being a 911, the engine is mounted right at the back, about 2mm in front of the number plate. This standard Carrera with the 3.6 produces about 315 horsepower, so it isn't the quickest thing I've ever driven, but, well, as you probably know, anything with over 300 horsepower is enough power to put that grin on your face, you know. That grin. This will still go from 0 to 60 in under 5 seconds, and it will top out at 178 miles an hour. So, I mean, how much quicker than that do you want to go, really? You could opt for a 6-speed manual or a 5-speed automatic Tiptronic, which is the model I'm in today. Your choice, really. It depends on what you're going to use it for. If you want to thrash it to within an inch of its life and go everywhere as fast as you can, then I would recommend the manual. But if you want to just cruise around on a weekend, then the auto is the way to go. Yes, it's now 17 years old, and no, it isn't the quickest to respond, but it's perfectly good enough for cruising around in. Reliability-wise, you don't need to be careful of the Tiptronic boxes, because if they haven't had a service, then they can be quite troublesome. But as is the case with all automatic gearboxes, if you service them, you know, i.e. change the transmission fluid in the filter, then they should easily last the life of the car. And a service on the gearbox of one of these cars will cost you about £250, so it's money well spent. Most people don't service their automatic gearboxes, and that's when problems can occur. The interiors are quite nice. They're a little bit drab and monochrome, but the quality is there. Bear in mind this car is now in its 18th year. Every single switch works, nothing falls off in your hand. Everything feels as solid as the day it left the factory. You get a cup holder here behind this drawer, which extends to carry 2 cups. 1 Porsche, 2 cups. Everything feels nice and sturdy. The interior space, it does feel a little bit cramped, especially in right-hand drive versions, because I've got nowhere for my left leg, so it's pressed up against the centre console, and there's nowhere really to rest my elbow. But it does offer quite a bit of storage. You get some storage compartments here in the door cards. The glove box is a reasonable size, and you get extra storage here under the centre armrest. And the quality of the carpets and the leather is superb. I love the gauges too, they're nice and simple and easy to understand. Although here in the UK where we're working imperial measurements, it does irritate me slightly that it goes up in increments of 25 when, you know, the speed limit's usually 30 or 40. The seats are very supportive and firm, but the leather's very soft, so you've got quite a good trade-off between comfort and support. Porsche are notoriously stingy with their optional extras, so you want to make sure that it's got all the extras on it that you want. I mean, for a car of this age, I wouldn't be bothered about things like sat-nav, but heated seats would be a nice bonus, which is something that this one doesn't have. You also get 2 rear seats, which I shall try and demonstrate for you. They're not the most spacious, but if you had to transport somebody for a short distance, then it's better than nothing. They're alright for kids, I suppose. In terms of luggage space or cargo space, you've only got the boot in the front, which is quite deep, but it isn't the biggest area. Handily though, you can drop the rear 2 seats, so you can create a shelf there if you're carrying larger items. To drive, it just feels really honest and simple. It feels pure. It isn't convoluted. Obviously handles the road really well. You can feel the weight of the engine pushing you into the corners. The steering is just about perfect in my opinion. There is quite a bit of road noise, not as much road noise as on the 4-wheel drive versions, but there is still quite a bit of road noise. But the ride isn't too bad. I'm guessing somebody with this has spent quite a bit on suspension work over the years, because for a car with 112,000 miles on, it didn't ought to handle and ride as well as it does. I expected there to be more knocks and rattles and crashes, and there just aren't. The brakes are good too, you get loads of feel through the pedal. Obviously being an automatic, it is less involving to drive, but if you just want to go for a bit of a cruise around, then it's not a bad option really. I just love the compact size of a narrow body 996. Onto the running costs. If you've always fancied a 911 but you're worried that you might have to sell a kidney, and I don't think you should panic too much because they're just not that high. I mean, if you think about it sensibly, you'll be buying one of these cars, a 17 or 18-year-old 996, and you're probably going to use it as a second car, which means you'll do about 2,000 miles a year in it. So fuel won't be an issue. This one does about 22 miles per gallon around town and 29 or 30 on a motorway run. So it isn't that thirsty. If you invest in a good trickle charger, a C-Tech or something like that, you'll just leave it on and store it in your garage. That way every time you fancy driving it out, you just unplug it and off you go. If you leave it to sit and rot and let the battery go flat, then you probably will have some issues. Road tax here in the UK is low because all these 996s come from a time before 2006 when Gordon Brown decided to impose a levy on ambition. So 12 months road tax will only cost you £330 rather than the £550 or £560 you'd pay for a 997. Servicing won't cost you a fortune either, because you can pretty much service these cars at any backstreet garage. They're very easy to work on. I would recommend you find a decent Porsche specialist and just stick with them, but you don't have to, not strictly speaking anyway. Insurance costs will vary depending on your location, gender, occupation, but generally speaking it won't be high. If you find a decent insurance broker and explain that you'll only do 3,000 miles a year or less, most will take that into account, and I wouldn't be surprised if you find a policy for well under £500 a year. One issue regarding reliability about the 996 is the infamous IMS bearing. It's the Achilles heel of the 996 911, and if left unchecked it can cause catastrophic engine damage. But it only affects less than 10% of a certain model range, so it's not like it's going to happen to every single one. It's usually more of an issue with low mileage examples. It's when they're parked up not doing any miles, that's when you can have some issues. Another thing to point out with the IMS, now that they're 17, 18, 20 years old, chances are it's been replaced. It's a bit like a head gasket on an MG or a Rover. It will have failed at some point, probably, so chances are, if you're buying a used one, it will have been replaced. If it hasn't and you're paranoid about it, then just get it replaced. It'll cost you about £1,000, it really isn't the end of the world. In addition to that, parts aren't generally that expensive either, and there'll be loads of these at breakers yards to get bits from. So that shouldn't, or it wouldn't put me off anyway. There are loads of owners clubs and forums that you can join if you fancy getting belittled by some nerdy know-all. Tyres aren't that expensive either. They'll cost you about £150 a corner for a decent brand. This one's riding on a full set of Churchills, which I imagine are a budget brand because I've never heard of them. I've never seen them sponsoring the Formula One, put it that way. One thing I'm starting to understand and respect about the 911 is the engineering that goes into them. No matter what you do to a 911, whether you're changing a broken switch or a faulty light cluster or something, when you start to take them apart, you realise the engineering that's gone into them. Everything's sensible and methodical. If you're looking to buy one, it will have had multiple owners, there's no getting away from that. If you're hoping to find the holy grail one owner 996, it probably doesn't exist. And if it does, it will command an exorbitant premium. So if you're looking to buy one and it's had 5 or 6 or 7 owners, I really wouldn't be put off by that. The most important thing you can do really is have a pre-purchase inspection done on it. That will pick up any faults, and there probably will be some because they're 20-year-old cars now. But that way at least you know that you're not buying a complete nail. Another thing to check out for is the bodywork. These are performance cars, so the chances are it will have seen the wrong side of a hedge once in its life. So just make sure that if it has been repainted or whatever, make sure it's been done to a reasonable level. But the 996 has reached that point in its life where it's come out of obscurity and it's become desirable. And that's why prices are on the rise. It's as simple as that. So thank you once again for watching. Make sure you give the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't done already. If you want to follow me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, I'll leave the links below. I'll also leave the link to my course below, so do check that out. Yeah, any comments or questions, let me know below, and I'll do my best to get back to you. So cheers guys, I'll see you next time.